Okay, so as you guys may have heard, Mortdog is not doing any patch notes rundown for this set. And I didn't do the first 2 patches because I was at the Esports World Cup with Vitality, crushing the competition as expected. We nailed it. And so now I'm back and I can start doing patch notes rundown. And this is a really huge patch. This is patch 15.3. And just to give you a disclaimer, I don't work at Riot. These are just, I copied these patch notes off the ones they send out. It's wrote here that it's just patch notes that they send out. And so it's not actually, there might be some small errors typed in and they might even add things after the patch. So, or rather after the patch notes come out, like maybe there's 1 or 2 lines of text. Sometimes they make those final tweaks, right? But very similar to that. But it should be working mostly off of everything here. They might add like 1 or 2 things. But yeah, I don't work at Riot, so it might be a little scuffed. Also, I did all this myself, and it took like 3 hours. And I just want to say, this is a really big amount of effort that like Mort and all of them have like kept doing for a long time. So my respect for the patch notes rundown people is really high because it takes a lot of work. Okay, so the first thing is the system changes. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Actually, I guess maybe we should set the macro of it. So just the previous patch was largely dominated by a lot of ridiculous Exodia combos. If you're looking at TFT Academy, you're looking at like the Artifact Jace or just like ridiculous power-ups that made things either unkillable or do way too much damage. You're looking at Colossal Udyr, for example, and that's going to be something that got hit. Or you just assemble like all pieces of like Crystal Gambit and you run over the lobby, or you hit like the over 9,000 Kaisa and you steamroll the lobby. There's a lot of that going on this patch. And so I believe that the design goals for this patch, when I did the whole thing, was that they want to keep a lot of that in while also bringing up the power lines of the power levels of other things that are underperforming. But most of the changes that I saw weren't on unit side and trade side. A lot of it was done on things like the power-ups and the artifacts. There's actually a lot of artifacts that got nerfed. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So the first thing is that there are power-ups that were changed. Specifically, they're introducing 2 power-ups back into the pool. The first one is max speed, where you get 10% attack speed, and you permanently gain 1.5% attack speed, that's not written there, every 3 takedowns. And then the weighting is standard, which is 10. 10 is just an arbitrary number because just to give you a reference, something like All Out on Cassante is higher than 10 because they're more commonly seen for things like that. Rising Chaos on Syndra is higher than 10, right? So because you're more likely to see these champion-specific power-ups on these units. But then 10 is kind of like the standard number across a lot of the weighting. So the weight purely means the likelihood of being able to see that. And then Mana Rush is now back. So there's a lot of subtext on the patch notes that said something like a lot of power-ups had weight of 0. That means that they couldn't be seen at all. And for example, Assassinate is this power-up, if you missed it during PvE, where literally it would turn the champion into an assassin and jump to the back line. That's still technically in the game, but the weight is 0, so you can't actually see it. So they they toggled basically some things from 0 to 5, things like Mana Rush. Mana Rush is an obscenely powerful one. It's really good on like Jarvan, for example. Jarvan instantly casts. You can put it on Zyra instantly casts. So these are going to be really powerful things specifically for them. Mana Rush, I remember, was like best in slot for Jarvan whenever you could get it. Definitely best in slot for Zyra if you can get it. It's probably going to be back. So you see it, you should probably click on it. Second thing, Prismatic Orbs. They've done a change to Prismatic Orbs, where now there's an option for Prismatic Orbs to just give you 55 gold. And this has to do specifically with a tweet Mortdog made not too long ago asking about how Prismatic Orbs actually felt. And I believe he was specifically looking for feedback on things that felt really bad. And he actually tweeted it here, so I want to give you a little bit of context. Hey, challengers, a common piece of feedback I always hear is Prismatic Orb balance feels off. When I press for specific things, I never get much things beyond I don't want gold. So this is me asking, what exactly do you feel is off about Prismatic Orb tables? And they got a bunch of responses from Dank Memes, from like Magarki. These are like challenger players. Revan replied, Goob replied, Soju replied. Loot tables should change based on Galaxy, gold sub. That's probably a little bit too hard. I like that he said giving gold equals mandatory FF and complain. But he got a lot of opinions. And I think the opinion was just that, generally speaking, Prismatic Orbs feel too sharp when they're good. Like they could be game winning on the spot. and then you get nothing. You get like gold, but you already hit your board, or you get gold, but you hit your board, but it doesn't really matter because other people get radiant items and artifacts and things like that. So they're trying to reduce some of the bad feelings, but I don't think they're changing in the top end just now. Instead of 55 gold, you get 10 gold, and you get a radiant lucky item chest, which I didn't even realize that was a thing. But a lucky item chest is you put it onto your champion, you get an armory of items, and they'll be radiant, but they're tailored to the role, I believe, of the champion, or to the champion that you have. So if you put it on Ashe, you're more likely to get like a radiant Rage Blade and a Kraken. If you put it on Udyr, you're more likely to get like a Stone Plate or whatever items is available on him. There's actually some math behind it. And then the third thing is that 4-star units now no longer have an HP bonus. So this is actually a pretty significant nerf to one augment in particular called Protagonist. Protagonist, it gave you a hero augment for a 1 cost, and then you would get a copy of that. It was like worth the wait. It would give you like 1 cost for the rest of the game. And so a lot of times you would get like a 4-star Zac or a 4-star Garen, and the flat HP bonus. In their patch note, they said that they felt like 4 stars are good enough now. So they're taking away that flat HP bonus, making 4 stars a little bit less interesting. But someone asked, bro, who was asking for 4-star nerfs? Some people were asking for hero augment nerfs, and this is a little bit of that. So also because there are power-ups that actually enable this as well. There's a power-up called Final Form that says if you have a 3-star version of this champion by stage 5-2, you get a 4-star version. So those kinds of setups are really dominant when they hit. So they're trying to just make sure that's a little bit down. So those are the major system changes that I saw on the patch notes. On the trait side, there are a handful of changes. The first is that Crystal Gambit. They're nerfing 7 Crystal Gambit from the damage amp, so it's not going to deal nearly as much. 30 to 20% is a pretty significant nerf. That's 33%. And that's impactful because the emblem itself, right, gives the damage amp, so it's going to be a little bit less oppressive. They are buffing the amount of gems that you get for losing on 3 Crystal Gambit, and that's largely because, as far as I know, I haven't actually gotten many starts with it this patch, but I was told, and I've seen it myself, that early Crystal Gambit on stage 2 is not even like that. You don't get like that many gems. And it doesn't actually feel like you get a big amount of reward for even lose streaking with it. In fact, it feels like 7 Crystal Gambit is something you purely pivot into for win streak, like later in the game. And like the early game lose streak aspect of it is not particularly powerful. So they're buffing that to try to make that offset a little bit. Mighty Mech is also getting nerfed, specifically the 3 Mech Splash. And this is one of the few things that they've changed about Sorks. That's going to be like something that you'll see. But Sorcerers are going to be taking a pretty big step back this patch. And it's largely due to things like this. They're nerfing the 3 Mighty Mech HP stay scaling. So Splashing Mech is going to have less tankiness. But to offset a little bit of that, they're actually improving the amount of heal. If there's a line of text on Mech that says the damage dealt heals the Mech. They're improving that a little bit. But overall, that should be impacting just the straight up HP scaling. I think it's probably just making sure that the mech units can actually contribute as opposed to just like splashing in mech. And then Luchador. This is a huge nerf. Not only are they nerfing the healing itself, right? As you guys know, Mundo and Gnar heals for a lot, especially when you get 4 Luchador. But they no longer cleanse damage over time effects. And that has profound issues. An easy damage over time effect, if you don't know, is like Malzahar, for example. It just not that we're going up against a ton of Malzahar, but Luchador like cleansing a lot of that kind of stuff is really, really impactful. And part of the reason why it's so good and why you can even tank things like Mundo 2 in the late game. So it's going to be a really, really big change. Luchador was really overperforming relative to the amount of cost that you put into it. And so on and so forth. More dog hated Luchador. I mean, I think a lot of people don't like Luchador in reality. Some people call it Ox Force 2.0, but I'm not sure if I would go that far to say it. Okay, traits. Number 2, Monster Trainer. The EXP stage bonus has been slightly increased. They didn't tell me how much it is in the batch notes. I think it literally says slightly increased. What that means, I have no idea. But what this also should mean is that you can ramp up to level 15 and 30 quicker. So maybe it's one of those things where it doesn't feel like so slow to get to Smolder level 30, so slow to get to Rammus 15. These are some of the big breakpoints. And maybe you can even play it later in the game. Let's say you pick up Kog'Maw at the beginning of stage 3. Maybe you can play it now. Who knows? But either way, slightly increased. I don't know what the number is. They didn't tell me. Star Guardian got an Ahri bonus change. So Ahri's current mana bonus says that when you cast, the Star Guardian gets 3 mana over 2 seconds. They're increasing that to 5 mana over 2 seconds, which is a significant buff, especially if you're playing something like Star Guardian Syndra right now, because Star Guardian Syndra is the most popular way to play Syndra, in case you don't know. You play Rising Chaos Syndra. And then that scales. That scales because the more Star Guardians you have, you're going to get more than 5 mana, right? You're going to get 5, 6, 7, depending on how much you stack higher of Star Guardians, it's going to be a lot. So that's going to be a big bonus to a lot. And this is going to be, I think this is actually one of the biggest changes to the vertical. Like, I think being able to get mana gain just generally spikes a lot of casting composition's power. So Star Guardians is definitely going to be on the map for this patch, if not the best like vertical that you can play for on average. And then the last major trait change was that they're buffing Wraith. Wraith is a pretty underperforming composition. In general, the only times you ever played around Wraith is when you pretty much had you pretty much had to, because you got it off of a branching out, like you got off a random emblem at the beginning of the game, tower defense, you got protagonist and you got Zac, so you could play into like heavyweight, Wraith and things like that. But generally speaking, no one really played Wraith. And it's also kind of a hard trait to understand because you're not exactly tracking when the darkness shadow thing would like zap you and deal damage. So in general, I think this trait has some awkwardness around it design wise, but they're buffing it. Hopefully it's playable. So far, some of the pro scrims that I've seen, it hasn't been that impressive. But there's also this element of like Varus is the best 5 cost to play around in the late game. So if you do end up playing Varus, is it because 6 Wraith is good, or is it because Varus is good? And that's something that we're gonna have to figure out as we go on. But we'll see. Right now, not much has gone on. All right, and then the last change to traits, and this might be controversial, but prismatic quests are now easier to obtain. They actually buffed prismatic quests. So, and that's across all 3 of these, Mighty Mech, Star Guardian, and Battle Academia. The easy things to understand is that Star Guardian mana threshold is now lowered from 20,000 to 1850. And then the other one from Battle Academia threshold to 175 to 160. And this is because I think a lot of people are giving feedback that prismatic traits are a bait. It feels like you never get it. A lot of people are quite disappointed by the lack of prismatic traits activation. So I think people in general feel like it's too hard. It's too hard, and it feels like not worth to go for. A lot of people say good. A lot of people are like, oh, wow, I don't want prismatic traits to be part of the game. But the reality is you don't want things to be in the game that feel like it's tricking the players, right? So that's kind of where they're going with it. As for the mech one, it's a little bit complicated, but basically the summary is you now can't get these augments unless you are in an encounter that allows that to even be possible in the first place. So you can't be really offered these unless you know it's gold, 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 or gold, gold prismatic. And if you're a competitive player, the takeaway from that is if you see I'll Be the Legs, I think that's the first one you can get. If you see I'll Be the Legs at gold, you know that the next 2 augments will be gold prismatic or gold, gold, or gold, gold. So that could be like an application that you can have. So you can understand. Now, sometimes that might happen on like Golden Gala, but it'll be interesting information nonetheless. I think to compensate for the fact that it's like easier to hit, they nerfed a lot of these things. They nerfed the amount of resistance you get. You nerfed the attack speed. I'll Be Arms no longer against it again. So they're gonna make it harder to get to, but they'll make it more guaranteed, I guess. I think that's kind of the logic. The nerfs on some of these are pretty big numbers, but the I'll Be the Head Prismatic now grants a Yone. So there's that. I'm not sure. Apparently, I'll Be the Head Prismatic should be, isn't it averaging? I don't know the actual stats of it, but it should average in the 2s or something like that, because if you're in that, you're hitting like the Prismatic anyways. But who knows? Maybe now against a Yone, you're gonna hit the Mech Prismatic. I've never even seen this, by the way. I watch a lot, I play a lot, I study a lot. I've never seen the Mech Prismatic. I don't even know if it's good, but I assume it is good. Okay, so that's all the trait stuff. Let's go into the 1-cost champions. We're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 1 costs. Nefiri and Syndra are the only 2 changes for 1 cost. Nefiri is getting nerfed. Specifically 1 and 2-star Nefiri. And this is because in the patch notes, they said that Nefiri was overperforming on stage 2 and 3 as too strong of an opener. But they're not touching Nefiri 3 because Nefiri 3 is not really a thing. The only times I've ever seen Nefiri reroll be a thing was with Silvermere Dawn. And so in general, Nefiri reroll doesn't have to feel like it's going to be touched. So it's just nerfing that opener a little bit because Nefiri can be quite good. And then they're also nerfing Syndra because, in case you haven't gotten the MO, Syndra is very busted with Rising Chaos. This has been the case since the beginning of the set, but they're nerfing her at all intervals of 1, 2, and 3-star, hoping to bring it back down. They're not nerfing Rising Chaos as a spoiler, but hopefully what they wrote in their minds is that this is enough to make it feel like, Rising Chaos won't be a problem. I don't think that's necessarily the case at the moment. I think Rising Chaos Syndra still is really, really good because it's not really necessarily just about the ability. They also buff Star Guardians a couple of other ways, so it's still going to be really strong. But I imagine that they're not trying to kill it off, right? Again, a lot of people are saying, like, why not just, like, nerf it super hard? I don't think the C patch was inherently an objectively good thing. I don't think, like, killing off Akali and killing off Volibear is good for the set. I think they're just trying to lower its power level. So, yeah, we'll see. 2 costs. This is one of the biggest nerfs of the entire patch. Dr. Mundo's HP gain at 3-star gets cut significantly. In fact, if you look at the number straight up, Dr. Mundo's 3-star is basically where the 2-star was. So it's a pretty sizable nerf. In fact, the implication would be, if you're still playing games on this current patch, the implication would show that 2-star Mundo is performing at what they feel like is a 3-star level acceptable number right now. So yeah, it goes both ways, right? It's like, oh, well, now 3-star is basically 2-star, but yeah, maybe 2-star is just performing at like a 3-star level. And I think a lot of people who started with Mundo 2 have recognized that as well. Mundo's way too tanky, but there's a double whammy here, right? They're not nerfing just Mundo, they're also moving Luchador. So Mundo gets hit twice in 2 really powerful directions. This might be something where it's like Mundo-oriented openers and comps might just be dead. It's entirely possible. But it's sort of justified because Mundo was unkillable at certain points and very oppressive whenever he got online. Gangplank is getting an adjustment. He's getting a buff and a nerf. He is getting buffs on his damage, so it makes the mech opener a little bit better. And this is somewhat to offset the HP nerfs for the 3 mech opener. Because Gangplank does more damage and the healing does more for the mech, Gangplank becomes more valuable for that opener. But they're nerfing his gold chance, which actually hurts him as an opener as well, because part of the reason why you would play Gangplank is to potentially farm gold. He's still actually a decent unit to play around early game for gold farming. It's a trade-off. I would say that this is a slight nerf in the overall thing, because I think the value of early game Gangplank farming gold is incredible, right? Anyone knows, even if Gangplank farms like 1 or 2 gold, it could be completely changing your early game to feel like your econ can really take off because you're making those really crucial intervals while keeping your tempo up. So I think this is like a slight nerf, but maybe you won't feel as bad for going for GP3 or something if you're in the spot to go for it. And anyone who's like, okay, so someone's like, oh, they're buffing GP. I think the gold chance has actually been a really big part. In fact, I would say that when Gangplank was at his prime for this set, I feel like the big problem was the gold chance. Yes, it was executing the backline with stretchy arms, but another big element of why Gangplank was so problematic was how much gold you would get. So the gold chance is also a really big part of his kit. That's probably too good. And then we have our first green sentence of the patch. As you guys know, green sentences are huge. And this is always one of the biggest things you can improve the DPS, which is less fizzling. Jin's force shot will redirect if the target dies when it's mid-flight. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. In the past, this has been something that single-handedly shot up entire comps of tiers. I think about back in set 9, that was the Rune Terror Reforged, the Legend set, when everyone opened up tomes and play Pandora's. There's a reroll comp around Samira as a 1-cost. She was a Noxus unit, and it was basically something like this happened, and she all of a sudden became an S tier comp because she no longer missed. And it's a really, really big deal. So that also could be why partially like Jin is paired with Mundo. They have to cut Mundo. They want to cut Mundo, but they're cutting him even more severely because he's played around this composition, things of that. So the other 2 costs, Kabuko is getting nerfed in his mentor form, meaning 4 mentor Kabuko is just doing too much damage when he's 4 mentor. Whenever you get 4 mentor Kabuko online, even on this current patch, even though he's not played very commonly, if you play him in the Kaisa setup, everyone knows the 4 mentor Kabuko just way too much. And so they're just nerfing a lot of him at 3-star so that he's more of a tank and less of like the actual carry. Sometimes when you're playing Gangplank reroll in the previous patch, or even Kaisa now, if you play 4 mentor Kaisa, that's not the best version of Kaisa in my opinion, but sometimes you do play that version. Kabuko actually outdamages your carry. So it's like, it's crazy that Kabuko can, as your tank, can actually be your primary carry as well. And then Xayah is getting buffed. It's the worst reroll line that most people are, that people have tried right now. And I think this is just justified, but it's yet another Star Guardian buff, which is one of those things that maybe Xayah is not supposed to necessarily be played in terms of the Bastion Xayah, but maybe people play Xayah as part of the Star Guardian arsenal. So we've been seeing a little bit of that in scrims. Just keep an eye out for Xayah, but she definitely needed the help because she was not particularly really impressive. Over on the 3 costs, we have Caitlyn. Wow. Okay. So public enemy number 1 for a lot of people is Jace Caitlyn. Here's your Jace Caitlyn nerfs. Except just, again, it's 1 out of 2, but I'll tell you right now, they did not nerf Jace. They only nerfed Caitlyn. And they nerfed specifically her primary target damage and her bouncing bullet damage. Her primary target damage is the first target she shoots, and then the bounces afterwards is what cleans it up. And they're nerfing it pretty significantly, right? 240 down to 200. 840 down to 790. That's a pretty significant amount of damage nerf. But I will say that it still is pretty playable from what I've seen on some of the early pro scrims. But I won't say that it's like what this actually means is 2-star Caitlyn is probably really, really bad now. Before, a big dynamic that people may have missed when playing Caitlyn Jace is that the power gap between 2-star and 3-star is massive. 3-star Caitlyn and Jace, they're like almost, they're just completely different units, right? Their potential's unlocked. They've ascended. They've Super Saiyan. They've achieved their final form, whatever anime revs you want. The difference between 2-star and 3-star is like profoundly different. And what this might make is like, well, now 3-star can still do well, but like 2-star is like terrible. So it might be one of those things where the missing rate on this is really punishing, meaning that you probably have to be more selective when you pick the line. Senna, this is also one of the biggest buffs of the patch, is that Senna is getting a huge damage buff, and they're buffing both of her ratios, the AD and AP. And if you've been listening or watching any other people's stream, the scrims, you see Senna is basically the carry in a lot of these compositions in a lot of mentor mech right now. So you'll see 4 mentor with Rise, and because Rise is an executioner, he pairs with Senna, who's an executioner, and then you play mech with that, and you'll play Senna Rise as your duo. And if you hit Senna 3, I mean, you're chunking up to a 1k damage, and they're also pairing it with a really powerful power up called Stormbender. And so they're like, this is what's really dominating day -1 of scrims. So Senna is a thing. And even on live right now, Senna reroll has like some underground fans. There's like a Senna Yasuo reroll that I don't really believe in, but some people do play Senna if they get a chance. Let's say you get like, you know, a Senna start somehow, maybe Pocket Recon Bob or something like that. I've seen people play it. So don't sleep on Senna. She's definitely going to be one of the big performers in the next patch. And then Smolder. Smolder is getting nerfed. I believe they're nerfing Smolder because Monster Trainer is getting buffed, and they don't want Smolder to be overwhelming the meta. And so I don't think anyone asked for Smolder nerfs, but I think they're basically having this as an adjustment because they're buffing Monster Trainer as well. They are buffing Yasuo's base form and nerfing his mentor slash form because kind of similar to Kabuko is that the mentor version is just way too good relative to the base form. So I believe what they said is they want to just make sure that feels a little bit more condensed as opposed to like, well, base form is useless and mentor form is godlike. So it's a pretty significant nerf on the mentor form based on some of the numbers that I saw. But the base form is a little bit better as a baseline. RE3 is getting buffed specifically. And again, it's one of those things that just makes Star Guardians potentially have different outs. It's a small buff. It's not that big of a buff, but it's a buff nonetheless. And the number just looks big. So, I mean, that'll probably get people all up in arms. Viego is 3 is also getting buffed. And they're specifically buffing like all of the damage of his strikes. So, and you know, as a duelist, he strikes a lot. So it might look like small numbers. Okay, you know, 10 damage, but it all just adds up over time. 4 cost champions. So that's all the 3 costs. 4 costs. We have Jinx. Jinx is also getting buffed. So yeah, we have the Ari bonus. We have Syndra nerfs, but we have Xayah. We have a slight Ari buff, and we have a Jinx buff coming in hot right now. So Jinx, but the thing is, I think most people think Jinx's general has not been very impressive this set. You can play her, but she's actually the duo carry for Syndra right now in Star Guardians. And if you do end up playing Jinx as like an item holder on your way to playing Fast 9 or any other sniper thing, she's generally a little bit underwhelming. So the Jinx buff makes sense, but it does make Star Guardians that much better. Karma is getting a sizable nerf. This is a pretty chunky nerf. And that combined with her frontline getting worse means that Karma is going to struggle a lot more. I anticipate Karma and Sorcerers to take a backseat this patch, and unless we figure out more ways to innovate onto it. But right now, I think the way we have played Karma is going to be less. I don't even know if that means they need to play more vertical mech or something else, but at the moment, I think Karma is going to struggle. And then Rise is getting a pretty significant buff, both in his base form and his mentor form. Rise in general he was really good at the very beginning because of the mentor mech at the very beginning of the set launch. But ever since like his nerf and like the meta has shifted, Rise has basically become a target dummy. If you actually look at the way Rise is played in Sorcerers, for example, I mean, I could just pull it up as one example, but Rise is actually played literally as a way to stall for your frontline because Sorcerer otherwise have 2 frontliners. So like a lot of times people are just not, and this is not a mistake. I get a lot of questions. Is that a mistake? You're putting Rise in the front line? No, you actually, like, the reason why is because he's a strategist. You put a strategist on your front line, you get a shield. Rise is just there to just get in the way. And so he's not really, part of it is because his kit is so good. He's a strategist, he's a mentor, he's an executioner, which can splash in a bunch of different things. So it's like too well-rounded. But it's kind of sad if it feels like you're never really supposed to itemize Rise. It's usually bait, and so they're buffing him. But this in tandem with the Senna buffs and some of the other way the macro perspective is, Rise is going to be a really contested 4 cost this patch, and I think that he is definitely worth itemizing now, which is a good thing because it kind of sucks that Rise was just such a bait to put items on in the previous patch. They bug fixed Samira. This was this should be a green sentence, but so I didn't highlight this. But they did fix a bug on Samira, which doubles her style's Omnivamp during her ability, where she's like hopping around and jumping in. To compensate for that, because I think they believe Samira's in a pretty good spot, they're reducing some of her damage so that way she doesn't become unkillable and hard to deal with. So this is supposed to be power neutral in anticipation for a bug fix, because remember, bug fixes are some of the biggest buffs that champions can get. So I didn't even realize that Samira was bugged. I didn't even realize that. So that's news to me. But apparently she was. So hopefully this makes her damage neutral. But maybe it's a pretty significant damage nerf, right, on some of these things. So hopefully this doesn't make Samira. Hopefully it doesn't make her unplayable, because I think that just would reduce the amount of 4 costs we can play around. And then Yuumi is the best scaler in the game. The longer the fight goes, her ability true damage does way too much damage. She's getting a small nerf. This is actually not, it sounds like it would be a lot, but watching the fights on some of the pro scrims, I think Yumi's perfectly fine. So I don't anticipate this to be that big of a deal. So there are nerfing Yuumi, but there's some people who are looking at this and said Samira's unplayable or unclickable. I don't think this is unclickable Yuumi. I think it's actually going to be perfectly fine. Plus with the fact that other things are getting nerfed as well. Other things that are competing with Yuumi are also getting a little bit of a tap. That just probably means that she's retaining her place overall. So it should be fine. All right. And then the last thing about 4 costs is that 3-star 4 costs are getting buffed across the board. And this is because, well, 3-star 4 costs are oftentimes a joke. They really suck. There's so many screenshots of like this 3-star 4 cost lost to Udyr 2. This 3-star 4 cost lost to some Kaisa reroll board. Like, how could I lose? They're buffing that across the board. Poppy 3 is getting buffed. Cassante is getting buffed. Leona's getting buffed. Rise 3 is getting buffed. Jarvan's getting buffed. Well, I guess they're reducing a little bit of his shield, but it doesn't really matter. They're just making sure that he actually does damage. So it should be more effective to hit 3-star 4 cost to close the game. If not, they'll probably do another wave of buffs. All right, 5 cost champions. Executioner. Okay, so for Lee Sin, they're buffing Executioner and Juggernaut Lee Sin in particular. And they're buffing the 1-star and 2-star versions of this. And you might notice some of these numbers, they basically just stopped showing the 3-star version of it because 3-star version is always going to win the game, so don't worry about it. But the Executioner primary target damage that's been Lee Sin first casts is going to do a little bit more burst. That also happens to buff the Rise Senna Executioner line. Just keep that in mind. Juggernaut also is getting buffs. Juggernaut Lee Sin, which is a little surprising to me. I actually think Juggernaut Lee Sin is fine. But I guess it's like one of those things where it's like always a luxury item. Now maybe you can actually have Lee Sin considered to be something that is like a more reliable unit to play around if you hit him early. But mana buff is a really big deal, especially these days when you don't get mana gain nearly as much. So that's a really profound deal. Seraphine, ability damage to have been buffed. Seraphine is, as you guys know, kind of a meme, but they're buffing Star Guardians in another direction, right? So now it's Zaya, Ari, Jinx, the Ari bonus, and it's Seraphine. And it's not like any individual of these buffs are that crazy. Okay, the Jinx buff is pretty big, but like there's a lot of small things. And the thing about TFT is like if you just buff things like small areas enough, it could be just the sum of its parts. And Star Guardians is also a sum of its parts composition. It's not really supposed to just be about like one hyper carry unit, unlike a reroll comp. Star Guardians is about like everyone chipping in and everyone doing a lot. So now Seraphine is, I believe, legitimately quite good in Star Guardians. This also happens to buff the top end of Yuumi. So if you're playing like a Prodigy line and you play 5 Prodigy with Yuumi Seraphine does a little bit more as well. And the number might not look that impressive, but remember that Seraphine scales with every stat in the game. So it's like, it's one of those things where you can scale this pretty aggressively depending on how your setup is. So you have to be really careful. And Seraphine's a death bomb unit, right? So if she ends up, she could be one of those champions where they give her literally 10 more and it's 235, and then Seraphine 2 literally one-shots the entire board because of the way things scale. The last but not least, Yone, who is actually the weakest 5 cost currently in the game. A lot of people believe Seraphine's the weakest, but that's because she's the most visually flashy. But Yone has actually been worse than 4 costs on average for almost the entire patch. They're buffing Yone, and that also is in tandem, remember, of how they're nerfing mech, but buffing things like Gangplank and Senna. So they're trying to make it so that the power into some of these mech buffs isn't going to be like mech is overwhelming. So Yone now is potentially a little bit better. I have to admit, this is a little bit harder for me to understand because I think I played so little of Yone, so I don't even really know if Yone is playable with these numbers. But I have to imagine that it helps with buffs like this. Okay, so those are all the champion buffs. Let's go on to augments. So the first augment is aim for the top that's listed. I put this in yellow. Yellow usually means like it's an adjustment, like it got buffed and nerfed. The reason why this was in yellow was because they didn't write the full augment text. I believe that after watching it on scrims, this is a straight buff. Because I thought that they maybe took away the lose. If you lose, you get 2 EXP because they only wrote this. But I believe that literally all they did was add this as a new sentence. Now your first win grants a component, and then everything else stays the same. So this should be just a straight buff for aim for the top. By the time I wasn't sure when I was doing it last night, and then this morning I watched scrims as part of my stream, and I think it's just actually just straight improvement. So that's good. Dazzling display. Interesting fun fact about this was that the augment itself doesn't actually have a percentage sign. It actually has no percentage at all. It's just 20. It says 20 or 25. And I always was wondering, like, is that just a flat number or is that a percentage? And the patch notes has confirmed that it's a percentage. So now it says 25 to 20% according to the patch notes. So now that's a pretty significant nerf, and it's yet another thing that sorcerers might struggle with. So apparently this augment was insane to click on for sorcerers, and I had no idea, but like it was hard to tell because if you look at the augment, it just literally wrote the number, node percentage. Deepening Shadows. This is the augment that says like every few seconds you get additional AD and AP for your Wraith units. That is now buffed from 5 to 6 because this augment probably is underperforming. Wraith's underperforming. Diamond Hands has been straight up removed. This is the one where now your Crystal Gambit can only cash out one time at the end of stage 4, I believe. That generally has been a really, really bad augment. So I think just to avoid people and trying to rebalance that, they just removed it. Game Plan is the one that marks your hexes for strategists. That augment has been performing pretty well, so that one's been nerfed. Give Them the Chair. That's the Mundo hero augment. They're buffing it. That's probably the weakest 2-cost hero augment right now, generally underperforming. Plus, they nerfed Mundo as well. So I mean, Mundo fundamentally changes as well, but it's just, I don't think they want Mundo to just not be seen with his hero augment being, whatever, and his big nerfs. Howling Gale, this is the one that says every 600 mana you cast, you summon a tornado that does like AoE stun. They're buffing that to be 550 mana instead, so maybe more desirable if you're playing Prodigies or maybe Star Guard or some other way to get a bunch of mana. And then Isekai, this is actually one of the biggest nerfs as well to an augment. It no longer grants a Hand of Justice, although I believe that was what was intended before, but it still gave a Hand of Justice. Now it actually doesn't give a Hand of Justice. And this is for every Isekai, Strategist, Prodigy, and Sorcerer. So I believe that was something that should have came earlier, but now it actually is. And then the second wave of augments, they're doing a pretty big adjustment to attack speed scaling. So one problem that currently exists with hero augments is that almost all of them want Rageblade. And that has to do with the relationship of mana gain. If you look at School of Justice Garen, for example, he wants Rageblade. If you look at Tectonic Titan Malphite, you want Rageblade. And that's because that's the best way to get mana to be able to cast, and your ability casting is what really defines your hero augment. And so they're reworking and trying to like nerf that attack speed, so that way it feels like it's not compounding as much with Rageblade. And I'm not going to lie, it's kind of hard to understand because they said that it's going to be like a stat adjustable scaler. I don't know what that means exactly because I have to see it in practice, but theoretically it should be a slight nerf because according to them, Rageblade is BIS on every hero augment basically. So they're nerfing that on Schoolyard Justice Garen, they're nerfing that on Nico, the Starfall, which is funny because I think that augment's terrible in general, but maybe it's good with Rageblade. And then Tectonic Titan on the Malphite as well. And then, but they are buffing Nico's hero augment just in general as a base. They're also buffing Sunfireboard, and they're also buffing Tiny Team. Tiny Team is the, you feel 3 or fewer Star Guardians, and all their bonuses increase. They're buffing that. And then Tournament Favorites, this is the one that says, based on how much damage you deal with your Soul Fighters, you get a score, and you get cash out reward. They're nerfing that to make it harder to get because it's probably just too easy to get the Gwen. The top end gives you Gwen, so they're just making those breakpoints a little bit delayed. The big list of item changes. There's a huge amount of changes specifically to Radiant items, but there also is a couple of small things. For one thing, they're buffing blue buff. So now it's blue buffer. Mana regen from 5 to 6. I don't know if that is... I don't know who that immediately benefits. I guess it benefits like the Syndra types with Rising Chaos, but that is a lot, though. That is a lot, especially because it's every second. Remember, it's like every second mana regen. And also Prodigies and other things like that. Like it just Syndra and all that like really benefits from how those kinds of snowball. So it might seem like a really small thing, but who knows? Maybe blue buff all of a sudden becomes insane now, and now your blue buff is like better than Shojin every way. Not entirely sure, but it sounds like a big deal to me. Rageblade got nerfed. Spirit Shojin got nerfed. These are just like really defining items in the meta right now. When they're BIS, they're super BIS on a lot of them. Although if you're playing Spirit Shojin on like Karma, for example, not that big of a deal. Not that people are playing Karma, but if you're playing Shojin on your AP champion, I don't think you're missing the AD. The big thing though is Radiant item pass is important because you might have seen this being posted on social media and a lot of streamers talk about it, but Radiant item power gaps are huge. When you hit the Radiant items that are good, they're amazing. When you hit the ones that are terrible, like Radiant Adaptive, they're absolute garbage. And so they're trying to bring up the baseline of that. So Radiant Adaptive getting significant buffs. Radiant Edge of Night now heals the holder to full health, which is basically reverting to what it did before. This is what it happened in the past, but to make sure that it doesn't become completely broken, they nerf some of the stats that you would get from it, which theoretically, I guess, is power neutral, but it's probably going to be overall a pretty big buff. And then they're nerfing things like Radiant Blue buff stats, Radiant Rage Blade stats, Radiant Shojin stats, Radiant IE stats, and that's just to try to keep it more in line. But I believe that these are still going to be most likely the best in slot items for people that still want it. They're also nerfing another wave of artifacts as well. Specifically the big three, which is Flicker Blades is getting nerfed from 7 to 6. Mana Zane. So the Mana Zane change is, I'm pretty sure it's a nerf, but like it's like a complicated sentence, and I was typing this pretty late. Mana Zane no longer banks mana and grants all of it after the second cast. Instead, it'll pause a mana regen and start it when the champion is not mana locked. So it just delays the mana that you get, which should be a big nerf. There's some pros that were in chat being like, is Mana Zane really nerfed? And it should be nerfed based off what I'm reading right here. But yeah, that should make Mana Zane less about casting and all of a sudden getting full mana and casting again, getting full mana and casting again while it's doing that. Instead, it'll wait for the animated finish and then maybe a second or two before it ramps up. It seems pretty minor. I don't know if that's minor because of the way combat can snowball. So it could be a really big deal. Seeker's Arm Guard got buffed. This is probably hinting towards Seeker Arm Guard just generally being one of the weaker artifacts. And then Silvermere Dawn no longer converts 1% of damage taken into mana. And that is a huge deal because that is part of what makes Silvermere Dawn Jace so insane, is that he can cast repeatedly very often. But they are buffing the straight up resistances of it, I guess, because I guess they're worried that this makes Silvermere Dawn unplayable. So maybe it could at least be one of those things as a makeshift tank item. But theoretically, this is the Jace nerf that you guys want right here. If people are like, why didn't they nerf Jace? It's because Silvermere Dawn is getting a red sentence. That's a lot. That's a lot. We got power-ups. Huge amount of changes here. Adaptive Skin is getting buffed, so you get more resistances. That's the one where you can get armor or MR depending on who's hitting you. Artistic KO. This is Jin's 4th shot augment, I believe. That's getting nerfed. Best defense % shield damage. That is Poppy's, I believe. And I played a game of this yesterday, and I thought this one was actually pretty good. Like I actually had it where it was actually out damaging everyone on my team, and I was pretty impressed by it. So this actually might be one of the better ones you can pick on Poppy now if you're lacking a little bit of that damage. Maybe your items suck. Bludgeoner, this is where you just ignore armor. It's getting buffed. Caretaker Shield, I believe this is the one where every time you cast, you get a shield to your teammates, if I remember correctly, and they're scaling that more based off your AP. This is the Colossal Udyr nerf. So a lot of people are saying, why aren't they nerfing Ashe? Why are they nerfing Ashe? Why not Ashe? What about Ashe? They're trying to nerf specifically the Colossal Udyr version of it and lowering the amount of HP that it gets off of 1 and 2. And they're also lowering some of the damage amp on 2 Colossal. Now, some people are looking here and they're ready to beat me to the punch. 100 HP nerf, that's it. You have to remember that Colossal is a 2-unit investment, and the 100 HP nerf is not insignificant. But I do agree that I think that this probably means that Colossal Udyr is still a thing. Like I just think it's still a thing, mainly because it's like the totality of everything. It's not just the Colossal, it's also the fact that Udyr gets durability off of duelists, and also the way he's like itemized. So I still think Colossal Udyr is going to be a thing, but it's not like this doesn't do anything. So it's definitely something to. I just want to point that out. But I do think that this doesn't really change that much. Again, you don't want to kill off comps is probably the way they're going about it. They're going a little bit conservatively, and the fact of the matter is there are more units being played with Colossal than just Udyr. There's like a Colossal Xin Zhao build that people are trying to go for, and maybe there's other moments where you can play Colossal. So I don't think they wanted to kill off Colossal as a power up. Plus, we love dragons, right? Okay, Essence Share. This is the one where you cast a percentage of your mana goes to your 2 nearest allies. They're buffing this from 25 to 35%. Efficient. This is one of the most OP ones in the game. Whenever you pick efficient on a unit that's casting, 20 mana reduction is huge. So 20 to 15. That is a sizable nerf. Does that mean efficient is bad? Probably not. It's still probably really good, but not nearly as insane. Fairy Tale is getting buffed, and they're buffing specifically the stages that it scales. So it's better in stage 3, 4, and 5. But it's no longer offered on Samira. So sorry guys, if you want to play Fairy Tale Samira, I didn't even realize that it could be on Samira. That's like a funny thing. That might have been a mistake. But yeah, Fairy Tale is getting buffed. Fan service. Now they're buffing fan service to basically be the most likely thing you're gonna get on Xayah and Rakan. So fan service will also always be offered if the player already has fan service. So people who want fan service, it's a specific one for Xayah and Rakan. If you get fan service on Xayah, that means if you play Rakan and put a second fruit on him, you are guaranteed to get fan service too. Now, the thing is, I've never hit it. I don't even know if that's actually good. maybe that means that maybe fan service has always been mid, but have fun with it. That could actually be the new S tier comp. Who knows? I never even played it. Hat Trick is getting nerfed as its base AD and AP. That's the one where every time you get a takedown, I believe you get a hat and you keep stacking it. Fun augment or fun power up. Kahuna Huna fires missiles on attack rather than hit. Less likely to fire on a dead target. So it's a targeting buff, which, as we've talked about already, pretty profound. And then Ice Bender splash damage. This is also a big buff to Rise. So now they're buffing Rise's stats. They're buffing Rise, sort of the comp you play around him. And then they're buffing Ice Bender himself. So Ice Bender now going from 20 to 30%, which is very nice. Well, that's only 1 out of 3. 2 out of 3. The Mech Pilot Health Share. So this is like stuff for Mech. You just get more health sharing. That's nice. Max Arcana. This is the one where you get more AP for takedowns, and it's permanently scaling. They're buffing the base of that a little bit. Max Speed. We talked about at the beginning of the patch notes. This is one that's being reintroduced into the set, and they're buffing it from 8 to 10, 1 to 1.5. And this should theoretically be good on someone like if that benefits off of earliest attack speed, like I guess like Xayah would be good with max speed. I suppose if you somehow start off with Ashe at 2-1 because you got like expected unexpectedness and you got a 4 cost, you could put it on Ashe. So there's like things like that. Max Vitality, they're buffing that as well. This power up has actually been a bait for a while, but it's a fun one. Everyone wants to click max Vitality, but it's not very good. Oh, Kale, yeah, you could put it on Kale as well. Theoretically, I don't know if it's actually good, but she would be one of the targets that you could put it on. They're nerfing Needlework. This is Gwen's specific power up, probably because 6 Orc was doing so well and whatnot, and hitting Gwen was just really strong. So the stats on her are always good. I don't think it would need to be nerfed, but it's fine. Not done yet. This is the one where if you die 8 times, you get damage amp and omnivamp. That's getting nerfed. Ordinary is getting buffed later in the game. Ordinary is the built different power up. This is a very rare one, actually. If your unit has no traits, it gets a bunch of health and attack speed. I don't know if this makes it strong enough. I've never had a spot where I could play Ordinary, but definitely maybe worth trying if you get a spot, because that's kind of a lot of stats. That's kind of a lot of HP and a lot of attack speed. I mean, that's certainly that's playable on somebody. Over 9,000. This is actually the biggest nerf of the power-ups, I believe. Over 9,000, mana regen is less common, and it no longer works on PvE rounds. And that is a really big deal because, first of all, over 9,000 working on PvE rounds, you saw this every game where people would just be buying units, putting the power snacks on it, looking for over 9,000, fielding it. I find Katarina, I fruit her, I missed, I sell her. Oh wait, there's a Kai'Sa in my shop. I fruit her, I missed. Okay, I sell her. You know, you see like this like song and dance of over 9,000. So you can get one more stack on PvE round. But that's because you were fishing for something like mana regen. Mana regen as a stat is worth a lot because if you think about like, you know, blue buff is giving you 5 mana regen. A lot of times over 9,000 gives you 5, 6, 7 mana regen. It's really, really powerful. And then the relative gain to some of the other stats were incomparable. You would get 4 AD or 4 AP, which is like 1/3, 1/4 of a component. But if you get a mana regen, you would get like a tier. And so you get like a full tier value. So it was like very, very powerful. So they're reducing its rarity a lot. When they say less common, no clue what that means. This could mean that over 9,000 in general is probably going to be seen less. often, or if it is seen, it's not going to be as good. Precision bonus mana per attack. Precision is really insane. I know Solus has been trying to tell me for a while that precision is just insane. Anyone who can roll precision, it's BIS. So reducing the number of mana you get per attack is just way too good. And then there's also a really crazy broken interaction where precision would actually override Silvermere Dawn's attack speed lock. So precision locks you at a 0.7, but then Silvermere Dawn locks you at a 0.5, and you can override it. So that was not intended, and they are now changing that. So that way precision is no longer getting that crazy synergy with Silvermere Dawn. Pursuit. This is Lucian's power up. So that's the one where he like dashes around and into the enemy team. Now you can gain 8 AP every time you int. So you'll get 3 AP, but your Lucian is still dead. Resistant flat reduction is now reduced from 30 to 25. Resistant is extremely powerful against like the comps that want to do a lot of repetitive damage. So it's good against Karma, good against like the Ashes and stuff like that. So that nerfs tanks a little bit, but you know, ends up. I'm not sure. I actually kind of liked resistant being really good, but I guess they felt like it was overperforming. Robo Ranger, this is the mech one where you get some of its AD and AP and HP. They're buffing it. They're just buffing mech a lot. Round 2, this is the one where your frontline units, if they die with the items, they summon a target dummy with the same items. This is also a pretty big nerf. 25% HP nerf on the target dummy, which is pretty big. Shadow Clone, kind of getting taken out back again. Once upon a time, this used to be like 100 HP and even better. Now it's getting nerfed again, reduced damage and reduced health. So Shadow Clone may not be BIS anymore on a bunch of champions, but it's still I don't know. It's just they're just nerfing it repeatedly. Maybe it's not playable anymore. Who knows? But they're just slowly but surely cutting it one patch at a time. Singularity is getting buffed. Singularity is the one where you do a 1 hex AoE, and the more you takedowns you get, I believe, the more HP scaling you get. They're improving the amount of HP scaling you get, so you get 2 more HP per death. Socialite is getting a pretty huge buff in terms of the duration. Now you get 5 turns of the marked hexes instead of 3. So that's really nice. But to offset its massive buff, they're going to reduce the amount of HP you get. So that's pretty big if you multiply it across 7 hexes, because that's how much you can get for a Socialite hex. So maybe a lot of HP reduced is a big deal. Spiky Shell damage, that's the one that gives you a bunch of armor, reflects damage, 5 to 8. Stand United. This is Shen. I believe Shen's a specific one where you just get a shield and you get, every time you cast, you get more magic resistance. I've never been in a spot to click it except for the crew, I guess. But I think Shen's the only one who can get it. But they're buffing that. Super Genius is getting nerfed a little bit. You can't get, it's going to be taking half a second longer to get the activation of mana. You get mana based off your regen, I believe. And they're just slowing it down a little bit. And it's no longer offered on stage 2, which I'm assuming is a nerf, because fights last longer on stage 2, but I can't tell if that's actually a buff. Like that's why I put it in yellow. I'm like, is that a buff? Is that a nerf? I'm not sure. Who's going Super Genius? You would often put it on the prodigies, like if you found like or you would put it on like a Lucian or something like that, I guess. Could you even get a Lucian? Super Genius was something that you would put on Yumi later in the game. Another big nerf here. Unstoppable is now from 300 to 150 health. That is probably the most overall ubiquitous frontline power up in the game. Everyone's been picking Unstoppable a lot, so Unstoppable is getting nerfed. And I've seen people pick it a lot less in scrims now. And then Weights getting less reduced durability as well. That's a huge durability nerf. Weights is probably overperforming on a lot of units that really want Weights. So yeah, 12% is a lot less than 18. And finally, we got to the bug fixes. Jinxed. Jin will no longer lose his 4-shot bonus when his attack animation is canceled before firing. I believe that is related to the bug fix that we saw in the patch notes. Dares is no longer offered Killer Instinct. Okay, I didn't even realize that was a bug. Support items removed from a double up assist armory. I didn't even realize that was a bug because I don't play double up right now. Crystal Rose 7 and 10 now properly grant progress in Talker's Trials. Great news for Talker Trials fan. The crew's first bonus now gives a correct shop odds for Ziggs at level 8 and higher. Wait. Oh. Correct shop odds, you say? Oh, interesting. Well, that's definitely not going to help the conspiracy theorists in TFT. The crew's first bonus now gives correct shop odds. So I'm not going to lie. At this point of putting together the patch notes, I kind of was like, my brain was turning to mush because I was getting really tired. So I actually didn't even read all the bug fixes. I only read like part of it. So that's actually a fresh reaction from me. Fixed tooltips, errors in Juggernaut's Crown and Bastion Crown. Okay, that's a text fix. Crystal Gambit no longer auto cash outs on subsequent double downs after failing the first double down. Okay. I didn't realize that. I've never been a chance to double down after failing the first double down. Mighty Mech can no longer sometimes spawn on the opposite side of the board when champions are auto-fielded and spawn the Mighty Mech. Okay, I didn't even realize that. Robo Chef fixed a bug where the Mighty Mech's items count towards the cooking pot augment. Did you guys know that? Mighty Mech was actually counting towards cooking pot. Hard Bargain is correctly banned in double up. Okay, good news for double up fans. Callista's overkill damage is no longer incorrectly amplified during overtime. Okay, so Callista overkill in overtime was nuts. Kaisa no longer fails to cast with mage power up when her target dies and no other target's in range. Great. Augment power up is no longer offered on the earlier augments encounter. Okay. Rio transfer now only appears in the first augment round. That's good because it's much worse later in the game. Fixed an issue where the audio for Emo 234 is missing from Kuro and Shiro. Thank God. Finally, TFT is playable. Final form properly removes itself after combat ends. Okay, that's the 4-star power up. Mighty Mech's Prismatic no longer occasionally fails to activate the first turn the player completes the quest. That's a big bug. Wow. Imagine you complete this Prismatic quest and then it doesn't even work the first time. Rising Chaos now properly applies its reduced efficiency to its magic resist reduction. Is that a buff? Rising Chaos properly applies its reduced efficiency. That is a nerf, I think, because it's reduced efficiency. And then Stormbender's damage can no longer critically strike. Cool. Best defense damage can no longer critically strike. Wait, that's actually a really big deal because people were playing specifically this one, mine, the Stormbender. Best defense damage can no longer critically strike. That probably explained why the Poppy was doing really well. Shadow Clone's items now is correctly reduced. This is applied to the Vow Caitlyn stuff. I'm not sure. Pack Tactics damage no longer applies on hit effects. Oh, well, this was the secret reason why Neferi was so good with Silvermere Dawn because Neferi Silvermere Dawn actually counted as auto attacks from Neferi. So the Pack Tactics was actually stunning with the Silvermere Dawn. A very, very broken interaction, actually. Okay, so that is the end of the patch notes. So this is now entering my commentary. This is the last slide, I promise. This is the initial patch. So this is my summary of the patch that I can give. If you missed any part of this, we're gonna upload to YouTube in like a little bit, like an hour or so. I'm literally gonna take this, export it, have my YouTube editors upload it very quickly. But the best summary that I can give is that I think the biggest losers are people like this in terms of the big damage. Mundo, Caitlyn, and Karma. And I should probably make a clarification that it's Caitlyn too that feels like it's going to be struggling a lot. There's a lot of power-ups that got massive nerfs. There are artifacts that got nerfed, but they're probably still playable. And remember, biggest losers doesn't mean they're not playable. But the OP rating items, these are the biggest things I took a step back. The biggest winners of the patch, I think Rise got huge buffs. I think Senna and Yone and Mech look really good. And then Jinx, Seraphine, and Star Guardians. I mean, I'm pretty sure this vertical is going to be really, really strong as well. Things that are likely not a big deal is that I don't think the Colossal Udyr and everything like that is going to go anywhere. I'm pretty sure that comp is still good, even though they got nerfed. From what I've seen, it's still probably going to be really strong. I don't think the Wraith buffs are real right now, but again, that could be something that I'm wrong, but we'll see. And then I don't think the Yuumi and Syndra nerfs actually did that much. I think that there's still really good AP units to play around, and I think Syndra leads the Star Guardians or the Prodigies still just fine. And I think that the Yuumi nerfs feel almost non-existent from what I was seeing. Things that we don't know yet that I always say that you just have to evaluate is Monster Trainer. It's like kind of hard to tell if that's like a really impactful thing. All the Augment Changes and Samira and the Soul Fighter stuff. I'm not entirely sure if that means that Soul Fighter is unplayable because I don't know how big the bug fix is on Samira. And that's it for my scuffed patch notes rundown. It took a long time to put this all together, so I really appreciate it. If you guys are watching this either on Twitch or on YouTube, please follow or subscribe, like whatever, so that it can make me feel better about doing all this. So if you guys enjoyed it, if you have any feedback on how to improve it, please let me know. I styled it my own way. I didn't want to just copy like the way Mortdog did it. I just wanted to do it in my own way that I feel like made sense to me when I'm reading at it. And of course, if you haven't checked out my other channels, please check out me either on Twitch, twitch.tv/Frodan, or YouTube. If you want my guys content, it's on Frodan TV. But if you want like tubers, actually, you don't see it right here, but it says drama. It says /drama. If you guys love TFT drama or talks, I put that over there. And that's probably where this is going to get uploaded as well. So it'll be youtube.com/Frodan2. All right, cool. That's it. So thanks for checking it out. Appreciate to Riot for sending me the patch notes last night, and they posted this morning. That's just part of the content creator program that we're in. And hopefully the patch is better. I think the patch will have about the same amount of diversity. It's like minus Sorks plus mech, and then maybe a couple more reroll lines. But we'll see. Anything can happen. And I'm sure if it's bad, they'll probably patch it. So I don't know how to sign off on the patch notes, so that'll be it for me. I'll catch you guys next time. Yay!